done. Haha. Right, so technical issues. We're on Zoom down here live. We're on recording up there for the replay. Haha. We did it. Right then, so the only other thing we don't have is a senior dog. We have Ripley here, who is 6.5. We have Pepper here, who is almost 2. Merlin is sound asleep, bless him. I've just been to check on him and he is completely sound asleep on a bed around the corner. So he'll probably wake up at some point because he'll hear my voice and he'll notice there's treats going on. But at the moment we are doing a senior dog class without a senior dog. So not quite, nothing's gone to plan so far, but we will work it out between us. So, as I've said before, senior dog stuff, although we are focusing on our senior dogs, it is all stuff that we can and should be doing with our younger dogs as well. So everything I do with Merlin, for example, warm him up before an activity, cool him down, certain stretching exercises so I can keep an eye on his body and his progressions, not letting him slide about on slippery floors, things like this. That's all stuff that I do with my other dogs anyway. I just make sure I ramp it up a bit more with Merlin because he is nearly 13. He has got both his knees have got luxating patella issues and he's had that since he was 1, so that's a long time. There's a lot of wear and tear over all them years on joints that were already weaker. So we do all this anyway, but the focus tonight is our senior dogs. So at any point, questions can come up, no problem at all. You can type away and they will come up on the chat. I've had one question that wasn't actually for this in particular, it was just a question in general for a senior dog. So I'm going to include that as well because I thought that makes sense. It's probably a question other people have got as well. So the first thing I always do when I'm working with a senior dog or a dog that's got any kind of mobility or joint issues, is I always warm them up a little bit. And the reason for that is I want their body to be prepared. I want them ready for activity, for action. And it also lets me check that they are okay, that there isn't anything going on that I need to be aware of. They've not got, a slight area that they're not putting the weight on, or they're not reluctant to get up and get moving from laying down somewhere. As long as everything's looking okay, then I know we can carry on. Merlin, as well as Ripley and Pepper, have done some stuff today. We did some tricks up here earlier, and one of the tricks was for Pepper's expert trick title, and it included her trotting through a ladder while pushing a yoga ball. The yoga ball is here. So they have done some active stuff already. But what we do, ways that we can warm our dogs up. Hello, Ripley, get off of me. You cheeky girl, aren't you? Ways we can warm them up is to get them moving, basically. So good old twist and spin. We use twist and spins for a lot of things, but twist and spins, when done really slowly, can be really, 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 really good for getting our dogs moving, getting them warmed up, and checking that their body is moving how we expect. And because every dog will do these differently, but we know our own dogs and we know how they normally do stuff, okay? Now, when we're doing twist and spins, it is important that they are standing, otherwise they're just going to move their heads. I'm trying to get that out of the way. And it is important that we keep the treat low enough that our dogs aren't doing what Ripley's now doing, jumping around on their back legs, to keep them all nice and on one spot, basically. Okay, so if they are sitting down, we can put a treat on the nose and just lure forward so the bum comes up. And once the bum comes up like so, then we can do a twist or a spin. So even if your dog has done twist and spin, so for example, Ripley twist, she knows a twist and a spin, but I'm going to do this slowly with her. Okay, so I'm going to put a treat on the end of the nose and I'm going to take her round in a circle and back to the beginning. Good girl, it's very nice. And then I can go the opposite way, or I can do a few in the same direction. Good girl, lovely. And while I'm doing that, I can watch her body. I'm watching that everything's flowing the way it should. I'm watching that she's not reluctant to do it, that she's not trying to sit down again, that she can't turn at any point. I'm watching everything. Now, one thing that I do add in, if I've got a dog that is a bit stiff one day, or a dog that I'm working with that is really, really new to this sort of thing, then I change the way that they do the twist and spin and make it a square, okay? That sounds a bit odd. So, I'm going to stand up for this. Right, Pepper Potts. So a square, good girl Ripley, just means taking them forwards and then alongside and then this way, and then that way. Good girl. And it just means, especially with a dog that wants to go quickly but is clearly, you know, a bit stiffer or needs a bit of time to warm up, it does actually slow them down a little bit, and it puts a little bit more of a corner on rather than a spin. It means that we don't go so fast, because it's actually quite easy to do that. It means the dog doesn't go too fast. It means they're less likely to slip out on the back end. And the reason why some dogs slip out on the back end is because their core strength, this area here, isn't as strong. And of course that will go the older a dog gets, the same as it goes with us. And so what can happen is if the back end starts to go and the core strength starts to go, we guide the front end in a spin or a twist, and the front end follows nicely, but the back end just flips round. If you think of the back end of a roller coaster, it just flips, always the fastest part, and that flips round. Whereas when we go in a more of a square, thank you Ripley, when we go in more of a square, we are allowing the body to work better. So the back end doesn't just follow the front, it actually is doing some work. So we're actually then concentrating on building up that core strength as well as the back end as well. So you're doing quite a lot. So twist and spin, as much as it is a very basic exercise, it's actually a really, really good one. So always warm up with some twist and spins. We do tend to add in other bits and pieces as well, depending on what we're working on. Now a warm up for most dogs, but especially again when you've got an older dog, is it really should be trying to mimic some of what your dog is going to do. So, for example, I know for a fact that we have a senior dog who does agility. So, with agility, obviously they are pushing with the back legs, they're landing with the front legs, they are turning, they are twisting. So there's quite a few manoeuvres there, and if we can mimic some of those during practice sessions at home, if we're warming them up before they go and do something, it's going to benefit the body even better, okay? So what I'm not going to suggest is that you warm a dog up with lots and lots and lots of jumps. It's not always obviously a great thing. Do you have to do this? We do. Can we maybe swap my thumb for a toy? That'd be quite nice. Oh, look at this. Oh, wow. So something that your dog can step on and step off is perfect for this. This is a small platform. This happens to be a conditioning platform by FlexiFit. Flexiness, making it up now, yeah, Flexiness. But it can be anything. It could be a concrete slab in the back garden. It could be guiding your dog in the back doorstep into your house and then back down again, depending on how high that is compared to your dog. It could be a book, thick book, just with a yoga mat wrapped around it. But something that your dog can step onto and step off of, okay? So, I'm trying to see myself on the Spanish screen. It's not great. So I think that can be seen there. And all we're going to be doing is getting rid of the youngest one. There you go. And I'm just going to guide Ripley, pulls up, good girl, and walk across so she comes down the other side, okay? And off, good girl. And then pulls up, nice, and walk off. Good girl. Now, what's then happening, good girl Ripley, is they are then, as they're building, as they're stepping up, they're using the front legs to put the weight up on the top, but they're guiding with the back legs. So then they push up with the back legs. They step up, they walk across and go downward, so we're starting to put the smallest amount of impact on that front end, so it's starting to engage everything that's in the front end they're going to need to use for landing, okay? And we guide them there for a second and then we walk them back off. Now, what we should be doing to help our dogs is when they come off, if you see my hand position, here it's up, and then we're going to go down to go, I don't know what that was, to go down the other side. Honestly, Merlin could have done better than that, like so. Because what we don't want to be doing, come in there, Ripley, come around. If our hand's up here and we guide them off, come off a bit, bloody hell. Where's my old dog? He can do all this. Like that. If my hand's up here, if you look at Ripley's neck and cervical spine, it's a really, really tight curve. And that's not great. Whereas when your hand's lower, the back is much, much smoother, much nicer for the dogs. So a few of those, after you've done some twists and spins, just guiding up. Doesn't have to be as many treats as I'm using. I'm just using a lot of tiny treats to slow them down. I don't know where it went. Good girl. Nice. Ripley, get off. Nice. Good girlie. And off you go. Good. So that's one way that we can start warming them up for something that's active, and that could be agility, hoopers, fly ball, those sorts of exercises. if you're going to be going then from home out on a walk perhaps that involves woodlands where your dog might be going over fallen trees, or it might be going somewhere where there's quite a lot of hills up and down. So this would help with all sorts of things like that. But warming your dog up with an activity similar to what they're going to do. Another activity that works really nicely is stepping over things. Might sound a bit odd. Stepping over things, different to this. Now I did this with Cassie. For those who remember Cassie was actually nothing with Ripley because they're not related, but Merlin's great auntie, Cassie, who I lost 6 years ago? 7 years ago? 6.5, something like that. I'm not sure now. When she got to about 15, that's when her back legs really started to go. They started to go when she was about 13 and a half, and I managed to strengthen them back up again where I was doing all my fitness stuff, and got her back to being able to jump back in the back door, going up and down the stairs, things like this. And then when she got to about 15 odd, then they started to deteriorate a bit more. So one of the things that I did for her was in my back garden, I had some really old plastic agility weave poles. And I just put a few of them about on the ground. And when she went out there to have a little mooch about, a little sniff around, as she was walking, she'd reach a pole and she'd just absent-mindedly step over and keep going. So what it did, without any sort of jumping, without her needing to really think about it, was it got her lifting each leg individually. And by doing that, she was working all of the joints, she was engaging all of the muscles that are needed to work the joints and things like this. So she was constantly doing some movement. And a lot of the time when our dogs get older and older and older, or even young dogs that have got arthritis problems, is they don't move enough. And it doesn't mean, thank you Ripley, it doesn't mean they have to move in a way that's really active, but moving in any way whatsoever will help them to keep moving. It's a bit like me. I've got hip problems, back problems, or pretty much everything. On the odd occasion I have a really good night's sleep. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, the next day I'm in so much more pain than a night where I'm up several times in the night for taking pain relief and letting dogs out and things like that. Because when I have a good night's sleep, I don't move much. So then I wake up and my whole body needs to get moving again. Whereas when I'm up in the night, although it's annoying and it's tiring, I'm up and down and doing stuff, so my body keeps moving, yeah? So having something like that. Now for home, actually I do use these at work, I actually have something that John made me. It's a ladder. You can buy ladders, it is a thing, but I wanted something that was a specific size. I've got two of these that lock together. And so for my size dog, my little tiny dogs, this works really nicely. It's been set up for their sort of size, but this could just as easily be a broom handle and a rolled up towel, and what else might you have around the house? A piece of piping from something, bit of guttering, something like that. And all it is there are different ways of doing this, and I'll explain why I don't do a certain way. All it is have it somewhere on the ground. Doesn't need to be up on anything. You can use rugby cones to support them, but they don't need to be high. And it's literally just to have the body moving, okay? So, Ripley, trot. Good girl. I don't know if you can see very well past Pepper's head. Trot. Keep going, don't look at me. Good girl. And literally all that's happening is the body is moving, which is what we want. So, Ripley, come out the way. Trot, Pepper. That wasn't a trot, was it? That was jumping. It's there. Find the treat. It's there, look. There you go. Right, Ripley. Trot. Can you see Ripley's legs moving? Trot. Yeah. So, they don't need to bounce or jump. They don't need to lift their legs up really high. In fact, they shouldn't be. It's just enough that each leg is independently moving. And because they're doing that, the body is working. The body is moving. And a few times, just over a few small poles, actually can make quite a big bit of difference. Now, there is an exercise out there. It's down in some of the trick titles. It's down with some of the conditioning titles that are linked to tricks, which are basically stacking lots and lots of poles. So you kind of take, I've got nothing that I can show you as an idea, where you take several different sticks and poles and things like that, and you basically just put them on the ground and they all overlap each other, which looks like a good idea, and then you get your dog to walk around them. The downside with that is when you have poles on top of poles is if your dog does accidentally tread on one, it's going to slide and your dog's leg is also going to slide with it. And then if they're not warmed up, they're going to pull something And it might not be obvious right then, but then later that day or the next day you might notice that actually they've got a bit of a limp going, or that they're a little bit sore somewhere where their leg has actually come out from under them. Whereas when you have poles and sticks and things like that just loose on the floor in different places, that's a lot less likely to happen. If they do tread on it, not a lot tends to do a lot. But when you've got lots of things stacked, they move. Hula hoops can work just as well. I've done this before with hula hoops, but again, I don't tend to overlap them. I have them separate so that the dog just kind of steps in and out, in and out. It's just basically to get the dog's legs moving. So those are a few exercises for warming up. And again, it depends on what the activity is going to be. If you're warming your dog up to take them for a long walk somewhere, then a little bit of walking goes a long way. So if they're going to go somewhere where they like to run, you know, I mean, even Taylor, the day before we said goodbye to him with hemangiosarcoma, at age 13 and a half, the day before he was on the beach in Clacton and he was running around like a loony, which is probably why he wasn't good the next day, because bleeding cancer, you know, doesn't take well to activity. But he was running around like a mad thing. So I needed to make sure he was warmed up. So even if they're going on just a very, very exciting run, a little bit of walking to start with really helps. And we see people, I see people do this at training, but I see them at walks. They drive somewhere, they open the boot, they either lift the dog out or let the dog jump out, and then the dog goes off and has a run around. And they've just been travelling for, could be 5 minutes, could be 20 minutes, but they're cold. Their body is cold in the back of the car, in the boot, the back, wherever it is. And then they come out, and if they haven't been lifted or have a ramp, then they jump out. They're jumping out and landing on a cold body, which isn't great. And then they start running, and the body goes, oh my God, what's going on here? And it takes its toll. And although dogs recover well when they're younger, as they get that little bit older, it does take longer for the body to recover from that. And what that might look like is later on that day or the next morning, they might look a little bit stiffer when they first get out of bed. You might find that they've got tender areas that they don't like to be touched. You might find they sit a bit differently to normal. There's lots of different ways that indicate some discomfort. And when the body isn't warmed up properly before they do certain types of activity and impact and things like this, it takes longer to recover, and you know, it can actually cause quite a lot of issues. So making sure they're warmed up can really help. So if they go out for a run, have them walking for a couple of minutes before they start running. You know, park maybe slightly further away so you can walk them for a little bit longer and then they can go for the run part. If you're taking them somewhere to go and run around on in woodlands where the ground maybe is a bit slippery, or on the beach, then you could take them somewhere that maybe can go up and down a couple of hills, or again you can ask them to do a few of the twists and the spins. You could ask them to go around like a park bench or a bin, something like that. You know, just get the body working. It makes such a big difference. It helps the body to warm up, to prepare, it helps it to heal and recover, and it can tell us if something's not right. So you might be about to go and do something, say you're about to go and do a Hooper's class, and so you warm your dog up, a few twists and spins here and there, and you think, hang on a minute, they can turn one way but not the other way's not quite right, let me have a little look. Yeah, okay, they're not quite right. Do I want to now do an hour of my dog racing around a Hooper's course? Probably not, but you might not notice that until they've done a quarter of an hour of Hoopers if you're not really seeing what they're doing. So can you see Ripley sitting within the ladder? You are funny, aren't you? So warm-ups, really important things. Now, training wise, exercises with dogs as they age, exactly the same as with us, the brain starts to deteriorate here and there, and it can affect memory, it can affect the way they take in information, it can affect just generally cognitively, so confusion and trying to work out what we're asking them to do, things like that. So we can actually stop that happening too soon by getting that brain working, and if we find it started to happen, we can actually slow that down, again, by getting the brain working. So think about with people, we do crosswords and Sudoku and things like that. It's a similar thing with our dogs. We want to be working on exercises that gets the brain going, but doesn't necessarily need the body to do loads and loads of stuff, but you can still add in active things. So the best things for this, I find, are things like target training. So that can be paw targets, nose, chin, a bridge target, all those sorts of things are really good for that. Also teaching our dogs to move this is going to sound weird, move body parts. Okay, now I actually taught, was it Merlin or Ripley? I think it was you. It was Ripley, wasn't it? I taught Ripley, and I have taught other dogs to lift their tail on cue. Ripley learnt this as a youngster for the show ring, because when she's thinking, her tail starts to go down, and then when she stops thinking, it goes back up again. So I taught her to lift her tail up. I don't know if she'd do it now, because I haven't done it for a few years. You can teach dogs to have their ears go up. You can teach them to look left and look right. You know, you can actually teach them to do quite a lot of different movements, which requires a lot of brain work, a lot of focus, concentration. It means dogs can do this if they've needed some crate rest. They can do it if they're having a bit of a bad day. They can do this if they've had a couple of days of activity and competitions and things like that, and really they need a bit of a day off. This is the sort of thing we can do with them, but you can still add active stuff as well if needed. Pepper, what have you got stuck to your face? No? Oh, a piece of polystyrene stuck to your eye. That's very nice. So, can we get you out of the ladder? That's a bit distracting, Ripley. So, targets. Let's have a quick look at some targets. Now, the obvious ones, the ones that most people have taught their dog or teach them quite early on. There's all sorts of notifications up and down on my phone at the moment. Oh blimey, I've got things going on both phones. So the most obvious touch is a nose touch. So that is touch, good girl, touch. Actually touch, Ripley, touch. No, yes, you cheeky monkey. Pepper Potts, touch, yes, and touch, yes. See, she did it. Is a nose touch, and if you haven't done a nose touch before, which I know most people that I know have done, but if you haven't, then you start off with a treat in your hand, close your hand up, let your dog sniff, they will make contact as they sniff it. Ripley, touch, good girl, and then treat and praise. Treat in hand, touch, good girl, and there you go. And you do that a few times and you praise them. You try that without a treat in your hand a few times. Touch, Ripley. Yes, there it is. You knew, didn't you? Good girl. And then when that's going well, you go to an open hand. Pepper touch. Good girl. Yes, good girl. Thank you for wiping your nose on my hand. And we build it up from there. And you can make the touches go bigger and bigger and bigger. So for example, you can ask for a few in a row. Ripley touch. Yes, touch. Yes, touch. Yes, good girl. Notice I'm getting Ripley to move. So that could be part of a warm up. You can ask them to do a touch and hold on to the position. Pepper touch. Touch and wait. Touch. Stop rubbing your nose, good girl. You're pushing my hand. So a prolonged nose touch. So a touch is a really nice starting point. We can do things like a chin target or a bridge target. Now a chin target, let's just turn you that way, or not. Let's turn you that way, good girl. So chin, no chin, yes, good girl, is literally the chin going on your hand. So chin, yes, good girl, yeah. Really hard for us to keep our hands still actually, but we do need to. And a bridge target, it's the bridge of nose. So a bridge target, Pepper, bridge. Yes, good girl. And Pepper, bridge. No, properly. Yes, good girly. Is that, okay? And both of those are done by a lure. And so all we do, for the chin, we want their chin to go across the hand and then downwards. So we bring it across and down like so. Good girl. And then across and down. Good girl. Nice. And then bridge is the opposite direction. So they go under the hand and upwards. Pepper. Up. Yes, good girl. I don't know why I said up. That's not anything, is it? Hey? Pepper parts. No. Ready? Yes. Good girl. Good bridge. Good girly. And we lure them a few times, and then gradually we can just kind of have our hand in the finish point, and they'll bring their nose into place and start adding a word. So I've got chin and bridge, and then gradually you'll be able to just have your hand guiding and then get the treat out afterwards, and then you'll be able to just have your hand there and your dog will know what you're asking them to do. And it gets, you can see that these guys want to do more stuff, but it's something that you can take anywhere with you. You can ask your dog to, hello, my phone's doing something now, running out of time. Oh, for goodness sake. Right, my Zoom will stop at some point, but I will go straight back onto it in a moment. So we should be able to use the same link to go back on. It's because I've only get 40 minutes, and I've obviously gone over 40 minutes. What is the time? 1:30. Okay. I thought I had 40 minutes, maybe I don't. It will suddenly kick us out at some point. So if you just use the same link to go back in, it will let me go. It should let me go back into the same link I did last time, and we'll carry on. But we're recording separately anyway, so that's fine. But yes, so little targets like that, we can ask them to move into a chin target. We can ask them to do a paws up and then a bridge. We could get them to do a twist and then a nose touch. So you can add it to other things and still have the active side of things. When Cassie, if she had a bit of a bad day, because maybe she had, you know, if we went on holiday, it doesn't happen much now, but when we did go on holiday, we might have a day where it was walking dogs, and then the next day might be resting, and then walking dogs, resting. And so the resting days, these sorts of things were really good, because especially with Cassie, bless her, her rest days, she would be tired, but her brain was still quite active and she wanted to do stuff. So it gave me some things I could work on with her. But targeting doesn't have to just be static. It can be getting them moving to different types of targets. And one thing, state of you, and one thing I like working on with targets are floor targets. And floor targets can be literally anything you like. I have got specific targets because obviously I do this for a living. But I've got regular flat targets and I've got ones that are sensory ones. So they've actually got different textures on. But these could literally be, you know, a paper plate. It could be a piece of paper you've cut out, or just a piece of paper. It doesn't got to be round, does it? It could be any shape. As a target, it could be a placemat or a coaster or anything like that at all. And you can ask your dog to do a paw target. You can ask them to do a nose touch. You know, that's entirely up to you what you ask them to do. But when you've got more than one, so two or more, you can actually ask a dog to go left and right. You can ask them to go to one and then the one that's furthest away. They could go in a triangle, in a big circle around you. And so they're moving. So you're asking them to go different directions and do the targets. They're using their mind and their body. And that's a really nice way, again, it can be a really good warm-up, but it's a really nice exercise as well. And you can make it harder by sending them further out and further and further. You can change what the items are, so different types of items, and some could be harder than others. You can, nibbling feet now, you can ask a dog to go slightly behind you and do a target so that you're not looking. That makes it a little bit harder again. You could try sitting on a chair or being on the floor. So you can make a target as difficult as you want, because it's getting your dog to think, and that's the biggest thing, is getting them to think about it and then applying what you're asking them to do. That's the hardest part. And sometimes when dogs are getting a bit older, we don't give them the chance to think about it. We just ask them, and then we ask and ask and ask, and then we're going, oh God, you should know this, and we're not helping them in any way. We have to remember a little bit of the hand signal sometimes. We have to remember to maybe make the thing smaller or easier and let them think about it and get it right. And when they get it right, we get that praise in nice and fast, and then we start progressing it again. And we want them to get it right, because if they get confused, then they're not going to want to do it. And if they don't want to do it, then their mind starts to go less active. And we want the active. So targeting is a great one. So targeting, like I say, sending them in different directions, trying to work out what can be seen on the screen. I haven't asked for it yet, Rippers Choppers, but well done. And that can be whatever you want them to do. So let me get up off the floor. It's a squirrel. It's not a real squirrel, don't worry. What does that say? Get rid of that. So, Rippers Choppers, ready? The target? I've actually pointed to that one. Yeah, good girl, good girl. So, you can just ask them to go to a target, like this, Ripley, target. That one. No, that one. Good girl, you're being cheeky. Or you can ask them to do something when they get there. That is entirely up to you. Pepper, pause. And down. Good girl. Flop. Pepper, go pause. Oh, okay, Ripley's on it. Good girl, Ripley. Spin. No, spin. That's wiping your paws. Spin. So now I'm going to help her, even though she's not a senior. Pepper Potts, pause on there. Okay, pause on that one. That's not that. No, there. Good girl. Good girl. Well done. Down. Good girl. Pepper, Ripley. Good. Down. Good girl. Okay, so it can be, this is obviously a tiny little setup because I'm trying to get it all on the screen. But asking them to go to different targets. Even then, even with 4 targets really close together that were really obviously being pointed to, I still had to help them out because they were going, huh? And that's with a dog that's 6.5 and one that's nearly 2. So you can imagine when a dog gets a bit older how much things can confuse them. And they know targets. You can mix it up, so you might have, say, a floor target for a foot, and then you might ask them to do a nose touch to a cone, and mix it about a little bit. You can ask them to go to a target, and then when they get to it, ask them to do something, and then ask them to do something else, and they go, oh, I thought I was going to go to a different target, but I'm not. Okay. But targets are a really, really nice thing for older dogs, well, any dogs are getting to do, because again, they're thinking about what they're doing brain-wise. You can make it harder by not only having more targets, but adding in that distance, as I said before. And the more distance that you've got, the more they've got to think about where they're going and what they're doing and processing that information. Again, it's the processing that we need them to do, because the more they process, the more they're utilising that mind and that brain. They are, aren't they? Yeah, yes they are. You can send them backwards. So not just sending them backwards, but another thing I've done before now, I've got treats, blimey, is something like this. So if your dog knows how to go through your legs normally, then you can ask them to go through. I've never done this with Pepper actually. Right, go through and target. Yeah, didn't think so. So we're going to go a bit closer, go target. Yay, good girlie, get it, find it. Good. Ripley, can you go through target? Good girl, that target. Look, the one that's there, target. Yes, there's a good girl. Yeah, so even just changing it slightly made both of them go, huh? But made them think, and that's what we want them to do. It's the thinking that we need. So it doesn't have to be a small exercise. It can be a bigger exercise. It can be asking our dogs to do more things with what we've taught them. So with the targets, you can ask them to do a chin target. You can ask them to do a sleepy, which is Ripley's favourite. Come around here. Good girl. Down. Down. Sleepy. Ripley. Yes. Sleepy. Properly. Yes. Good girl. She was going to do a rollover, which wasn't what we wanted. So sleepy is a chin target, but to the floor. Ripley, sleepy. Yes, that's better. Good girl. We can ask them to do a chin target to an item. We can ask them to do bridge to something else, which Pepper has started doing. Haven't asked her to do it, she just has started to do it. So for example, for Pepper bridge. Which bridge? No. That's holding. Bridge. Good girl. And she started pushing her nose onto the handles of things. So she was actually doing it with a bucket, but the bucket's all back at training now. Pepper. Bridge? No. What's that? Where's your bridge? Bridge? Pepper? Good girl. Bridge? Yeah, good girl. So she was starting to do that on the plastic handle of the bucket. She's a bit confused with this, which is understandable. So you can ask them to do the bridge for something else. You can ask them to do paw with other items and other things. You know, depending on what you've taught them to do, you can ask them to do it to other stuff. You can ask them to do a nose touch to something different. So what I was saying earlier about the big ball, they were pushing it. So they were using a nose touch to push the ball, basically. So, Ripley, I've forgotten your words. You push? Yes, good girlie. Oh, you've run over Pepper now, look. Pepper Potts. Push. Yes, good girl. Oh, hello. Oh, got low battery. I wasn't expecting that to be the case. I was expecting all sorts of things. Haven't been kicked out yet though, that's good. But I have got low battery. So asking them to do a touch. And I remember when Taylor had his 2 tumours removed. Big surgery. He was at the AHT for a few days following that to make sure he healed properly. And literally they cut him all the way over the top and all the way under the bottom because of where the tumours were. And he couldn't do anything for a month, you know, he was really needing to heal. But his brain wanted to do things. He was an active dog, he wanted to do stuff. And I remember him being in the garden, under the shade, because he was shaved himself, so he was under a parasol. And I took a slightly smaller yoga ball out, and he was in his bed, and I would put it in front of him and ask him to push, because he loved tribal. And he'd push it, and I'd praise him and fuss him, and then I'd slide it back. Aha. Right, let's just go back into that again. Connecting. Okay, so we'll get people back in. Yeah, so I'm on Zoom down here for the live, but I'm up here for the recording. So Zoom's just kicked me out, so I'm just going to let people in as they get here. So Yeah, so, and he'd push the ball and I'd give him praise and give him his treat and everything, and then I'd get the ball and I'd bring it back close and I'd ask him to push it again. Oh, he was so happy, he had a happy face, his tail was trying to wag as best it could, and he had an absolutely brilliant time, but his body was overall resting, it's just his head that was moving. And he was just really, really happy. And we did that several times, and then he obviously got a bit tired, so I stopped, moved the ball out of his way. But it meant he could be thinking about what I was asking him to do, and we were using a target, but we were using it differently to how he might normally have used it. So we didn't have to put anything active in, but it also wasn't just a nose touch. Yeah, he was actually having to target something specific and do something. And for him, he got to see a result. He could see that he had pushed that ball. I mean, there were times he hardly touched it, so I moved it for him. But for him, he'd done the action and he'd moved that ball, and he was really happy with it. So that was a good thing. Okay, just getting people in. So yeah, so that's a nice thing to do as well. So targeting of all sorts is really, really good. And if you're not too sure about how to get some of the targets, do let me know. So you've got the nose touch on your hand, you've got a chin target where you're luring underneath your hand, you've got the bridge where you lure underneath the hand. What else did we talk about? Paws, if you haven't got a paw previously with your dog. Try and get them from either sitting, or some dogs are okay with laying down. And what you want to be doing is, the way I would do it with an older dog if they haven't done it before, treat in one hand, the other hand is going to touch the shoulder, hang on, and then run your hand down the leg and then lift the paw up. Obviously mine know how to do this, and then praise them for doing that. Don't lift the leg really high though, but from the shoulder, run your hand down, and then good girl, lift that paw. And then gradually what happens is the more that you do that, yay, good girl, they'll start lifting their paw up early, and you can start adding your word like paw or shake paws. And then as you start to bring your hand out, they'll start lifting their paw up and they get the idea. There are other ways, but they require different types of balance and things like that. So I think it's probably better to do this method, depending on how coordinated, balanced, and what your dog's like, really. Oh, hello. So yeah, so you've got paw targets to teach Pepper how to do the floor targets. That was basically, I'd have a target nearby. Good girl, Ripley, well done. Pepper Potts, yes. And then I would reward her a few times for being on it. Good girl. And then I'd actually start taking her off. Yes, and then when she put herself back on, I'd reward her and praise her. And then I'd guide her off or treat her off of it, and then she'd go back onto it again. And when she was then starting to navigate towards them, I'd put a target down, she'd get on, I'd add in target, paw target. Wouldn't I? That's because I wanted a floor target quicker than I'd taught her the paw. So that was me. If your dog knows paw, then you can start off by having an item in your hand, asking for as a treat, asking for a paw, the way you normally would, but this time you've got a thing in your hand, paw, yes. And they target the item, and then gradually that goes on the floor, and they'll be able to work out how to target it on the floor. Pepper, paw, yes, good girl. And then from there, it goes there, paw, yes. And you can build that up from there. Good girl. So you've got lots and lots of different targets that you can be working on with your dogs. And then one more exercise is, so in the Senior Dog Progress Awards, we call it item interaction. And what we mean by item interaction is whatever your dog wants it to be, okay? So it might be that your dog likes to do things like retrieve, and if they like to retrieve, then that's what it can be. It can be getting a toy, throwing it to one side, encourage them to bring it back, give them a praise and a fuss, and then maybe throw it the other way. Don't throw it behind them because they have to turn quite sharply to get it. You can turn your dog and then throw the toy. So if I show you with these guys, it's a long way up, Pepper Potts. So if I was playing with Pet, I've got a squirrel here, rather than just throwing it over her head, which isn't going to be good for her, I might ask her to do peekaboo. No, that's not good for you either, is it? Come on, peekaboo, and then throw it. So she's always going forwards, yeah? Or I might ask her to go round me first, or I might do a twist, half a twist, and then send her. So things like that. So if they like retrieving, then you literally can work on a retrieve, but just be careful that they're not trying to run and look at you at the same time, because then they twist their body funny. You don't ideally want them to be catching an item in midair, because again, if you slow-mo video your dog, you'll see how many directions their body goes in. It means they're landing on their back end a lot of the time, or they're landing in a funny position. Really not good for their body at all, and you're more likely to get little micro tears in places like the ligaments, like the cruciate ligaments and places like that, and then you end up with issues not far down the line. So rolling stuff is really good, throwing it far enough ahead that it lands before your dog gets there, hiding it for them to go and find and then bring back. That's another way of doing a fetch. But if your dog isn't big on fetch, or has stopped doing it perhaps because maybe their teeth aren't as good, or they're just finding it's harder, then item interaction can be whatever your dog wants it to be. So it can still be things like your twist, your nose touches and things like that. What are we doing, Pepper? What are we doing? It can be hiding it for your dog to find. So hiding it behind a piece of furniture, hiding it in the garden behind a flower pot, and then going around with your dog, and when they find it, if they're not likely to pick it up and bring it back to you, you could ask them to put their paw on it. You could ask them to lay down next to it. You can ask them to put their nose on it. And then gradually they start to learn that when I find the thing, I do this action that you've just taught me, and that tells you that I found it. So then you can start hiding it more difficult, I can't think of the word, in a more difficult way, so under something, on something perhaps, so they have to look over the top of a chair, or go behind something a bit more. And then what they can do, because they're not going to pick it up anyway, they go to it and they can lay down to go, it's here, I found it. And you don't have to be right with them to see that they've got it. You can say, oh yes, I know where I hid it, and you're doing the right thing. So it's called an indication, and by teaching our dogs to indicate something, you're getting that brain working again. And again, they are moving a bit because they're looking for it, but it's not taking its toll on your dog's body. It means they can do the other exercises and activities they like, but this just brings in an extra element for that brain work. So search and find, fetch, however you want to call it. You're getting tired. Look at your eyes. Can be about throwing, but make sure your dog is facing the way it's going to be thrown. So if they're facing you, you could throw it behind you, so they go that way. Rolling it on the floor, hiding it for them to find and then bring back. But if they don't bring it back, teach them to do something else, to put it on their nose on it, to paw it, to lay down next to it, whatever it might be. And then you can throw it and they go to it and then do a target. You could go and hide it and they go and find it and they lay next to it. Yep, so it's called item interaction in the awards, because it's literally, there's lots of different sections, and it's have an item and your dog and whatever works for them. It's really warm up here, isn't it? We've actually got access to a radiator up here, which we haven't for most of the house. It's got furniture in the way, so it's very warm. But yeah, item interaction is a really, really good one. So there's another way of utilising your dog's brain power without it always being about the activity, and the activity potentially not being great for your dog. You've probably seen or heard stuff about the ball throwers, ball launchers. Ball launchers are bad, ban all ball launchers. I don't use them. I don't take out a toy to throw for my dogs for walks, because our walks are very different to that. I've got nothing against a ball launcher. What the actual issue is, are where sometimes people take out the ball launcher because their dog is really active and they need tiring out, so they literally spend the majority of their walk, which could be half an hour or an hour or however long, picking up the ball, throwing it with the ball launcher. The dog brings it back, drops it, you keep walking, you reach the ball, you pick it up with the ball launcher, you throw it, the dog gets it, brings it back, and that is the whole walk. And quite often the dog hasn't warmed up to start with. Quite often the dog's doing the same action over and over again. They're jumping, they're grabbing it, they're landing on their back legs, they are twisting in a funny way, and that's not great. It's repetition, it's all that repetition over and over again. Whereas if the dog was warmed up a little bit, if they used the ball thrower to throw it a couple of times to get a really good throw, and then maybe put the ball away or rolled it a few times or hid it for the dog, it wouldn't be anywhere near such a problem. But generally speaking, the ball launcher issue is more about the repetition and the what it does, the impact it does to a dog's body, rather than it being about a ball launcher. It would be the same thing if you didn't have the launcher but you just kept throwing the toy over and over and over. So it's all about how you're doing it. So yeah, so hopefully that's given you a few things to, oh sorry darling, to work on. I'm saying sorry, it's a squirrel I'm sitting on. So we've got warming up, which things like twists and spins, mimicking the action your dog's going to be doing, so like walking over the poles, going up and off of an item, things like that, but also things like targets, nose, chin, bridge, paw, all those sorts of different targets, targeting an item on the floor, targeting you, targeting a ball to get them to roll it along, that sort of thing. And then also item interaction, whether that is some sort of a retrieve, but how you throw the item is important, or interaction in that your dog indicates they found it, or they do a target to the item instead of picking it up, if that's what their preference is. So that gives you a few things to work on, hopefully. So if you've never done any training with your senior dog before, now's a good time to get started. If you have a dog you've done training with and they're getting a little bit older, it might be you've got these exercises but you haven't used them for a little while, or it might be that you've got them but we've got some different ideas to try with them now. So do them, okay, basically. Try doing them, implement little bits here and there while you're waiting for the kettle to boil. If you're, you know, okay, there's meant to be something being delivered in the next few minutes, right, I'll just go a couple of targets with my dog. Or we've taken the dog somewhere, we're going out and they're going to get out the car and we're going to a secure field, so they're going to get out the car and then go and have a run around the field. You know, walk them into the field, get them to do a couple of twists and spins, get them to do a couple of nose touches, and then they can go and have a race around. Just think about these little bits because it can make quite a big difference for your dogs. Right, I'm going to go and wake up my senior dog now, who's going to be really annoyed that he's missed doing stuff. So I'm probably going to have to do all this stuff again with him now, but I don't mind, that's fine. So yeah, have a go. Let me know how you're getting on. Have you done any of this stuff with your dogs? I'd love to see it. Send us a video, tag us on Instagram or Facebook. On Instagram we're at Cass and Tay, so CASSNTAY, and on Facebook we're on the Senior Dogs, Super Senior Dogs group, but also Dog Training for Essex and Suffolk, so you can try us on both. And if you haven't done any of these, if you need any help, just pop us a message either in the Senior Dogs group or reply to the emails, and I will obviously give you help with that as well. So thank you very much for joining us live again on this phone here and replay on the top phone here. It just didn't quite go to plan today, but it's been fine. We've got it recorded, we've got it working. Hopefully lots of things for you to work on with your senior dogs now. And I say I'm going to go and wake my senior dog up, spend some time with him. So enjoy the rest of your evening and the rest of your day, and we will see you very soon for what's coming up. You have got your senior pause playbook, hopefully you're able to work on, and the next thing we've got live will be the talk. Okay, so you should have had that on email, but if you're not sure, just pop me a message through. Okay, take care for now.